Hello everybody and welcome back to another video in our web design series. In this video we're just going to look at the different units that we commonly use within our CSS style sheets. So in here I'm going to go ahead and just hit exclamation mark, and this is going to help us generate our boilerplate HTML template that we can use. I'm going to rename this to units and then hit save on that. Now inside of the body I'm going to have a div, and this div we're just going to give a class name of box. And then inside the div, I'm going to have three different h1 tags. So I can say h1 dot, and we'll just call this one alpha. And then we'll write alpha in there as well. And then on the next one, we can say h1 dot beta. And then in there, we'll write beta. And then finally, we can say h1 dot gamma. And then we can write gamma in there as well. And these are, of course, the first three letters of the Greek alphabet, if you don't know that. And now, if I come back to my page, you can see I have my three H1 elements. We've got alpha, beta, and gamma. Now let's go ahead and link our CSS file. So we can say link:/CSS, which will link us to style.css, which we already have created over here. Now, if I come into style.css, in here, let's give first some definition to our outer box class here. So inside of here, we could say box, and I'm going to give this a border just so we can see where it is. Border of 2 pixels, solid black. And if I save that, now you can see exactly how big that is. Let's give that a little bit of padding as well. And maybe 8 pixels. And you can see I have an extra gamma there. So let's go have a look and see where that's coming from. And right there, yep, I sure enough have an extra gamma. We don't need that. Come back in here. So our box, we've got 8 pixels of padding on that. If I hit save, now you've got padding all the way around. And you've got alpha, beta, and gamma. And let's say we don't need this box taking up the entire width of the screen if our text is only going to be that long. So I can change the width on this box. And of course, you can do that with the same unit we're using for the padding, pixels, if you want. And I can say maybe this is going to be 200 pixels, right? But this is not a good one. Pixels is not necessarily a good unit to use if we're going to be resizing across different devices. We're just going to have to write a lot of different code to make that work. There's already elements that we can use that are much more responsive in nature and will adjust to the screen size. So for example, here, I can look at this and I say, okay, well, that's about 25% of the screen. So if we say 25% VW, which stands for viewport width, and then if I save that, you can see now it's set to 25% of the viewport width. Again, if I were to change that to 50% of the viewport width, it goes to 50%. And we can do the same thing for the height here. So height, I can say 50 VW, and that goes all the way to 50% of the viewport width. And you'll notice that I've actually done VW, which stands for viewport width, for both of these. Now, if you really want this just to be a quarter of the screen, you probably want to do 50 VW for the width. And for the height, you probably want to do 50 VH, which is viewport height. Now, if I were to save that, you can see we've adjusted just a little bit here. And our box is now 50% of the height and 50% of the width. And we can look at this further. If I were to take this screen and change the size, you could see that box is going to respond to that. And whatever my width is, the box will take up half. And whatever my height is, that box is going to take up half of that height as well. So this is a much more responsive unit that we can use. Now, inside of that box, we've got our alpha, beta, and gamma classes. If I were to come in here, and let's say we want alpha to be just the most prominent, and we want beta to be a little less prominent, I could say dot beta, and then inside of here, we could say font size, and we could essentially set the font size equal to, I don't know, whatever we wanted, 20 pixels. And now you can see beta has shrunk to 20 pixels, but again, pixels is not a good unit to use. We generally want to use something that's a little more responsive than that. So in CSS, we have two units here that we generally will use for font and padding and a lot of things, but it's rem and then em. Now, if I come in here and say 1 rem and hit save, so this is 1 rem, and rem stands for root element. So this is going to be, my font size is going to be 1 times whatever our root element is. Now that root element font size, if you haven't defined it, is going to essentially be defined by whatever browser we're using. So we can actually come up here and make an HTML block. And if I put a font size in here, and let's just say I want that font size to be 40 pixels, and hit save on that. Now you could see our beta has grown pretty significantly, as have our other two alpha tags, because the default for your, if you come here, you can see the H1, the H1 for alpha and then the H1 for beta. Both of those are going to have a default font size using a rem unit. So anytime we adjust this font size, it'll adjust everything in our document, because essentially all of these unset font sizes are going to default to something that's relative to this root element font size. Now, if I were to come in here and instead of saying 1 rem, I say 1 em and save it, you can see nothing changes. And the reason nothing has changed is because rem is going to be relative to my root element, and then em is going to be relative to whatever this guy's immediate parent element is. And in this case, if you look in here, you can see this H1 beta. Well, this is inside of this box, and this box, we don't have any styles defined. I mean, we do, but we don't have any font size defined. So this font size is going to be taken again from the HTML or our root element, which is going to be 30 pixels. So if I come down here and say, well, instead of 30 pixels, I want our font size in this box to be 15 pixels. Now, if I save that, you can see my font size in my beta element has adjusted to 1 times this element, this parent element that we're inheriting from, which is 15 pixels. Now I can set this to whatever I want. I can have that be double. I can have that be 2.5. Really, you can have this be whatever you want. I can have that be 10, right? There's all sorts of different sizes that you can use. And just remember, rem is going to be relative to your root element font size. And then your em is going to be relative to your immediate parent's element font size. Now, beyond that, we have other things we can use as well. You have pixels, we have em, we have rem. We talked about viewport width and height, which you can also use for text. Maybe that's, again, not the best way to set text sizes. But you can also come in here and I can say maybe 1 in. So in stands for inch. And if we save that, you can see I have beta is now 1 inch high. You can also do centimeters, you could do millimeters, and there's all of these different units that you can do. But really, the ones that are going to be important that we use a lot is going to be this viewport width, which you give a percentage for that, the viewport height, which you also give a percentage, and then the em, the rem, and pixels. Hopefully this short little video has helped you understand the different units that we use when writing our CSS code to style our HTML documents. If not, definitely review this video again. Check out the reference material I put down in the video description, and we will see you in the next video.